This next PowerPoint is about irrigation and use of fresh water. So what this slide is showing you at the beginning here is irrigation is a technique in agriculture to get water to our crops, and about 70% of all the fresh water used in the world goes to agriculture. You can see 68% over here, which is close to 70. 19% used for domestic and industrial sources or uses, 10% used for power, and 3% from evaporation from reservoirs. So the gist here is that a lot of water is used for agriculture. Okay, what does irrigation do for us? It basically increases the productivity of our land. So 16% of agricultural land is irrigated, which leads to land that produces 40% of the world's food. And what you see here is a field that has been flooded in a way of irrigating it. Here are a couple of drawbacks to irrigation. What you see here is waterlogging. You see a large amount of water on this field, and if we put too much water on a field, then we basically flood the roots. They can't get enough oxygen, and they could die. Another drawback of irrigation is called salinization. What this means is that we have too much salt left behind through evaporation or saltwater intrusion. This can be very toxic for plants. What you see here is a lot of salt left on this field. Where in the world does salt come from? It comes from the fact that in the water there is natural amount of salt. So I've got water over here that's being watered on my plants. My water has minerals and salts in it. Sometimes that water evaporates and the salts are left behind, and then I have a tremendous amount of salt left on my soil, and that's called salinization. Okay, for the next few slides here, what you need to do is there's a chart in your packet, and you need to fill out what type of irrigation is being used. There are names for each of them, and you need to fill out what the description of those things are, what the efficiency of that type of irrigation is, what are the benefits, and what are the drawbacks. The first type is called furrow irrigation, and what is a furrow? A furrow are these long trenches right here, and right here, and right here where you can see all this water going in. So what happens in furrow irrigation is you build these trenches, you fill them with water, and it doesn't have much effort involved. It's pretty cheap, so those are benefits. It is 65% efficient, and the drawbacks here is you can get waterlogged roots and you can get salinization. Now, what does the efficiency mean? Efficiency is what percent of the water that reaches the plant roots is not lost to evaporation or runoff. So when I say this process here of furrow irrigation is 65% efficient, that means 65% of the water reaches the plant roots and is not lost to runoff or evaporation. The next type of irrigation is called flood irrigation. Here's what I'm going to do here is I'm going to basically flood my entire field, and I'm going to let the water soak in. This is really efficient, 70 to 80%. It's easy, it's cheap. I'm just putting water on here and I'm flooding my field. What are the drawbacks? Again, we can waterlog our roots if we have too much water. Lots of water here, we could soak up to those roots and eventually kill the plants. And we could have a lot of this water evaporate, which leaves a lot of salt behind. Those are two disadvantages. The next type of irrigation is called spray irrigation. You may be more familiar with this, where you see sprinklers basically pumping out water. So nozzles or sprinklers pump out water. It's 75 to 95% efficient. So the advantage here is it's more efficient, but a disadvantage of spray irrigation is it costs a lot of money and it uses more energy. Type of irrigation that you need to know about is drip irrigation. What you do is you have a slowly dripping hose and you bury it either on top of the soil or right below the soil. Here's my hose right here. Inside the hose or in the hose I've got tiny little holes and they drip water out. So it's very slow, but what happens is it's over 95% efficient. So it's the most efficient. This is the great advantage of it. It reduces weed growth, keeps the soil surface dried, you don't get waterlogging. It's especially useful in plants that come back year after year after year. Those are called perennials. Those are plants that come back every single year. The drawback here for drip irrigation is it costs a lot of money. And also you might need to remove all these hoses if you're going to use a big machine to plow your field. So this is very nice and efficient because it gets the water right to the root of your plants and you don't waste any water. But it's pretty expensive to do because you've got to bury those hoses all along your entire crop. So that's a disadvantage. After we finish with this slideshow, there's a video link for you to watch about this place called the Ogallala Aquifer. Now, what is an aquifer? It's an underground water source that can be used and pulled up for agriculture and other means. And this aquifer is in the Midwest of the United States, so it's all in Nebraska, some in South Dakota, Colorado, Kansas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, and Texas. It covers a very, very large area and is really, really important for a water source for the Midwest and the United States. And the video is going to be showing you some things about this aquifer and why we're sort of worried about using it up too quickly.